Greetings and welcome once again to another episode of the Reggae Planet Radio Showcase inside the Reggae Planet Spotlight, inside the Cool Game Podcast. Welcome to each and every one as we continue inside this Cool Game Podcast series known as Seattle Kraken and the NHL Expansion Story. As you know, there's a new team in the NHL, the Seattle Kraken, and they started out in this year of October 2021. But right about now, we're going to take you back on a little stroll through history. NHL Hockey history, and today we're talking about NHL Expansion Story Part 3. The Great Expansion Years from 1967 all the way up to the present day of 2021. And you know, the newest addition to the league has been recently, in the last 4 years, the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And now in 2021, it's all about the new team in the NHL in the expansion story, the Seattle Kraken. But right about now, we're going right back in time in NHL hockey history, and we're taking you to the early years of the Great Expansion Years in 1967. So right about now, we're going to talk a little bit about the big 1967 expansion. The 1967 expansion was called the Great Expansion of the NHL. In the early 1960s, television sports had become very popular in Canada and America, and professional athletes were now seen as stars, similar to movie stars. Yes, indeed. The NHL TV contract was running out, and the NHL wanted to make some more money from TV revenue. So the idea of expansion became more popular. They were thinking now if they could expand the league, add some more teams and everything like that, they could gain more money now in the new emerging markets of the new cities and from more increasing TV revenues. So in 1967, it was called the year of the Great Expansion, when they doubled the size of the league from the original 6 teams to 12 teams. They added new teams, such as the Philadelphia Flyers in 1967, as well as the Los Angeles Kings, along with the Pittsburgh Penguins and the St. Louis Blues, as well as the Minnesota North Stars and the California Seals, later became known as the Oakland Seals or the California Golden Seals. In 1976, they were relocated to Cleveland, where they became known as the Cleveland Barons. But 2 years later, they would cease all operations and the team was folded. So the people of California had to wait for a couple more decades before they had more new NHL teams in California, in addition to the LA Kings. In the 1970s, the NHL continued with their expansion plans. And in 1970, they added 2 more new teams to the expansion. Vancouver Canucks and the Buffalo Sabres were added in 1970. The new trend of NHL expansion continued throughout the 1970s. And in 1972, the New York Islanders and the Atlanta Flames was added. 8 years later, the New York Islanders won their first of 4 Stanley Cups in a row. 1974, the NHL added the Kansas City Scouts and the Washington Capitals. The next major expansion was in 1979. There was a rival league known as the WHA, the World Hockey Association. And they were competing heavily with the NHL. They were even stealing some of the great players. The World Hockey Association was putting new franchises across Canada and America in some of the great potential cities for new NHL hockey teams. So after various amounts of territorial and legal battles and wranglings, the two leagues came to an agreement and they decided to merge the NHL and the WHA together. And the NHL adopted Winnipeg Jets as well as the Edmonton Oilers, the HARTFORD Whalers, and the Quebec Nordiques. Those teams were added to the NHL in that same year of 1979. Yes, indeed. This is the history of the NHL expansion. The NHL Expansion Story. Inside the Cool Game Podcast. So in 1979, the Winnipeg Jets and the Edmonton Oilers and the HARTFORD Whalers, as well as the Quebec Nordiques, were added to the NHL. Then in 1992, the Ottawa Senators and the Tampa Bay Lightning also joined the NHL. This became the official rebirth of the Ottawa Senators, the legendary Ottawa Senators, who was one of the original founding members in 1917 in the first official NHL hockey season. The original Ottawa Senators had a famous, outstanding history in professional hockey. They were founded originally way back in 1883, and they won a total of 11 Stanley Cups in their history. They competed in the NHL from 1917 until 1934. During that time, in 1934, due to financial difficulties, the team moved to St. Louis, where they became known as the St. Louis Eagles. But as I said before, it only lasted one more year, and then they disbanded and they left the NHL. They continued on in some other form in some other leagues, but they were no longer an NHL team after 1934. For over 50 years, there were no more official NHL team in Ottawa. And then, in the NHL expansion of the 1990s, a new franchise was awarded to the city of Ottawa in 1992. And now we have the new Ottawa Senators, which came back in the league as an expansion franchise in the 1992 to 1993 NHL hockey season. In 1993, a new team in Southern California was also added. The new team was called the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, and the Florida Panthers was added in Florida. Then, a few years later, there were more NHL expansions. In 1998, the Nashville Predators joined the NHL, followed by the Atlanta Thrashers in 1999. In 2000, the NHL added the Minnesota Wild and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Yes, indeed. So right about now, we're going to tell you about some relocations and stuff like that. Over the years, there's been some relocations as well. In 1976, The Kansas City Scouts, who was an expansion team in the 1967 expansion, they moved to Colorado and became known as the Colorado Rockies. Eventually, in 1982, they moved again to New Jersey. Yes, indeed. And they became known as the New Jersey Devils. The Atlanta Flames, the first team in Atlanta, they moved to Calgary in 1980.
And they became known as the Calgary Flames. Also in 1993, the Minnesota North Stars, another team from the Great Expansion of 1967. They relocated to Dallas City and they became known as the Dallas Stars. In 1995, the Quebec Nordiques relocated from Quebec City in Canada to Denver, Colorado, USA, and they became known as the Colorado Avalanche. And in 1996, the Winnipeg Jets relocated from Winnipeg City all the way to Phoenix, Arizona, and they became known as the Phoenix Coyotes. Later on, they changed their name again to the Arizona Coyotes.
In 1997, also the Hartford Whalers relocated to Carolina and became known as the present-day Carolina Hurricanes. And also, eventually, the Atlanta Thrashers moved to Winnipeg in 2011, becoming the second and current incarnation of the Winnipeg Jets. Yes, indeed.
In 2017, the Las Vegas Golden Knights became the first expansional NHL team since the year 2000. And that brought the NHL to a total of 31 teams. But now, in 2021, the NHL has expanded again to a total of 32 teams. There's a new team on the rise, the Seattle Kraken. Yes, indeed. And as I said before, it's going to be very exciting to see what they can do in their first season. Do remember that the city of Seattle is no stranger to Stanley Cup. They have won the Stanley Cup Championship years ago, way back in 1917 as the Seattle Metropolitans. So let's see what can happen now. Thank you for tuning in. Reggae Planet Spotlight presents the Cool Game Podcast. It's all about the coolest game in the world, the great Canadian ice hockey game, and the coolest music in the world, the great Jamaican reggae music. Yes, indeed. Like, comment, share, and subscribe with your family and friends all around the world. It's gonna be a super exciting new year in the NHL with the new team playing in the new season. So welcome to the Seattle Kraken. Welcome to the new season. It's gonna be groovy. And we'll be right here inside the Cool Game Podcast to keep you posted and updated about what is going on inside the coolest game in the world.